Hi, I'm Eric Kane.
And I'm Paul Tassi.
We're back with the Two Player Podcast. We've been on a bit of a hiatus, but since The Walking Dead is coming back, that means we're back too.
Yeah, we're pretty much a Walking Dead podcast for 60% of the time.
Until Game of Thrones comes around. Yeah, I know. It's pretty slow in the video game. Well, and we're running our Forbes video game podcast, which means this one we use up all our good ideas for that.
Yeah, so you should listen to that one also.
Yeah, well, I'll link to it. But we can't help but talk about The Walking Dead, and there's been some interesting news lately. Lauren Cohan is probably off the show.
Pretty close. I mean, she's definitely got one foot out the door. The latest news is that what started with Hollywood Reporter saying that she's been kind of one of the most sought after actresses for the new pilot season, where a bunch of networks get together and they want to cast all like the hot popular actors and actresses in their new shows, and she's been getting offers left and right because she hadn't re-signed with The Walking Dead for season 9, and it seemed like she was pretty tempted to take some of those offers because AMC was not offering to pay her as much as she wanted. And then yesterday the news broke that she is now literally attached to an ABC show. It's called like Whiskey Cavalier, where she plays a CIA agent opposite some dude from Scandal playing an FBI agent. And while that's just a pilot, and pilots don't necessarily get picked up, it's a significant step forward in her potentially leaving the show if they don't work out like a really good deal with her and quickly.
They're not going to. AMC is notorious for underpaying its stars, like especially on The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
I know Andrew Lincoln isn't getting paid nearly as much as he's worth. And that pretty much goes for all the leads in that show, and it's it's because they really can kill them off with impunity at any point. So I say it's just great news if Maggie's off the show, because I think she's going to be a lot more fun to watch on a different show. I don't really care for some of the things about her character. First of all, she's written terribly. That's not Cohen's fault. She's written very poorly, especially since the death of Glenn. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but she was sick to the point of like it was scary enough that everyone took her from Alexandria, drove her to the hilltop to get her to a doctor because she was so sick. They thought she was going to lose the baby. There was theories that the baby was turning inside her and was going to eat her from the inside out, which is scary and kind of cool. But on the way, they were ambushed by this guy Negan and his friends, the Saviors, and they killed her husband. And then they took her to Rick took her to Hilltop, where a doctor gave her aspirin, and now she's better and is hardly ever on screen, even though Glenn was her husband. It's just so inexplicable to me what they've done with her.
She is like a quote unquote important character because she's leading the Hilltop and one of kind of the main people, but it's just I can name easily 6, 7, 8 other people that have kind of a more important pressing role than her.
Like Eugene.
Yeah, even Eugene is a more important character than her now, or
Gabriel.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd go Gabriel, but Gabriel might be a stretch. I mean,
but you don't get interesting, tense scenes with here's something. Gabriel's locked inside a trailer with Negan, and they have this big scene. What scene has Maggie had that's anywhere like that intense or important?
Really confusing confrontation where she got pulled over and then sent back to the Hilltop.
Oh God!
And
that's
like the last Maggie scene I really even remember, and I still barely have any idea what even happened in that scene.
Where Simon catches, basically, like they pull up and nobody on the good guy's side draws their guns or fires, and then they just let her go, so it was all pointless anyways. This is what I mean by bad. She has been given a terrible story. I would be gone just from not even a money point of view. She must be looking at these other shows and thinking it can't get any worse than this.
Yeah, and that's why I totally understand why she would want to leave. I'm not gonna go so far as to say I want her to leave, because in a perfect world I just want them to write her character better and let her do more and be a better character. But if thinking of it from her perspective, it makes perfect sense why she would want to kind of head for the hills at this point. And I haven't written this up yet, but this has me wondering. Black Panther has me wondering about Denai Guerrera, I think that's how you pronounce her,
Yeah,
Michonne,
Michonne.
about
Hmm.
her prospects going forward because she's been in nothing except The Walking Dead for 6, 7 years now, and now
Hmm.
she's part of this enormous breakout cast in like one of the biggest, best roles in this world-shattering blockbuster.
Yeah,
And
I know that changes everything for
so,
her.
how does that play out going forward? And that would just be, I don't know. You lose Carl, you lose Maggie, you lose Michonne. Like, it's not even The Walking Dead anymore. I mean, you can only cut so many people, and then you're left with people like Daryl and Carol who weren't even in the comics in the first place. You have Andrew
Yeah.
Lincoln half out the door. It's a strange new world, to paraphrase the comics, but
Well, my secret hope. Okay, it's not so secret. I've talked about this before, but I think that AMC has already made moves to creating the sort of the Walking Dead extended universe, right? Fear the Walking Dead would being the main part of this. I really think that by all means continue with the Walking Dead, but not with the just the Walking Dead as we know it. I really think that we need new, like just completely new stories. I mean, part of the problem is with the show right now is that they've been trying very clumsily to follow the comics, whereas in Fear the Walking Dead, we've seen how much freedom they have, and it's just resulted in a much more interesting show. And I think let's get rid of all the old cast, get rid of Maggie, get rid of Carol and Daryl, maybe keep one or two of them to sort of move on to these other stories and these other shows. And I just think that that's the only way that this doesn't get really stale because it's already pretty
yeah,
stale.
I agree. I think if they keep just trying to follow the comic storylines alone and then kind of limping along with half a cast because three giant cast members left that were supposed to be there for another 4 years and just they're kind of subbing people in, I just think it's going to be kind of more of the same. And I don't
Hmm.
personally, I don't think the next comic storyline is particularly good either. So if the show kind of didn't do that great with the Negan plotline, which is probably the best comic storyline, I'm concerned as to what they're going to do going forward. And I do think Fear the Walking Dead is a great example of what happens when you just can kind of do whatever you want and you are able to create an entirely different set of characters and different kind of goals and motivations. And I do believe that The Walking Dead as a brand can last for a really long time. It's just a matter of how they're going to structure it going forward. And I think just the days of this star-studded Walking Dead cast with every other episode is brilliant, like in season 5 or something, is just not coming back.
No, probably not. Well, not unless there's some big changes, and that's again why I think the anthology approach makes more sense because you can get some new blood in there, new actors, new producers, new writers, and make shows that feel more fresh. And any move towards that is great. And I also think it's just great for the actors because I complain about Maggie's or Cohen's accent on The Walking Dead. I feel like Maggie has just an unrealistically thick southern accent, and I think Rick kind of does also. But like, let's see him in other things where they can really like stretch their wings, do something new. I love seeing Michonne in Black Panther. I mean, she was kind of the badass fighter in that, which makes sense. But I really enjoyed seeing Sonequa.
Martin
How do you
Green.
say her? Martin Green. There we go. In Star Trek Discovery. Did you watch Star Trek Discovery?
Just the first episode before CBS locked me out.
Yeah, I went ahead and subscribed for a couple months just to see it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great to see her in a role that gave her, backstory and drama and romance and all these things that in The Walking Dead are always so weird. It's just so weird in The Walking Dead. They never do character development in a way that's really that the actors deserve. I really feel
Well,
like
and that,
that
yeah,
these actors can do so much
that's
better in
another
other
example, like
roles.
Sonequa Martin Green, of she was kind of like a third string character on The Walking Dead, and I mean
Hmm.
they killed her off. I don't think she wanted to leave necessarily, but she used The Walking Dead as a stepping stone to a really kick-ass part, and we've seen Denai Guerrero do that. We've seen John Bernthal obviously do
Well,
that,
he's a great example of that.
and
And he's probably the best example, and he was only on the show for two
yeah,
seasons.
exactly. So I feel like a lot of the actors have to be kind of looking at The Walking Dead as like, yeah, I could get a lot of good stuff going forward. Um, but other than the top people that are getting paid just absurd amounts of money, I don't know how much people want to stay.
Well, Chad Coldman also, he's another Tyrese.
Yeah,
He's gone on to do. He was in the Orville, and he was in The Expanse,
yeah, he's been in a
and
bunch of
some other
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah, it took me forever to realize he was in the Orville.
I know, right? Well, it's a tricky one to
Yeah,
spot. Pretty hilarious too. Yeah, I think that more than anything right now for these actors, The Walking Dead is a great springboard. And I'm honestly, how much longer do you think uh, Rick Andrew Lincoln is going to be on board? I feel like he must be getting
I'd say two
to the
2 years. I'd say
two
leave
more
after
years,
season
so
10,
season 10. Yeah, that makes sense.
and that would not line up with the comics at all. But you know,
What does these days? I mean, that's the thing. They're trying to stick to the comics, but they kill off Carl, who's certainly not dead in the
yeah, I mean, he's
comics.
like the entire future of the comics, more or less. So it's more than a little bizarre.
Well, I look forward to the day when the show is called Enid and Friends, and really revolves mostly around Enid and all the various lieutenants from the Saviors who become her bodyguards.
Yeah, all these people leaving. Enid's gonna be stepping up, bigger role. So
Well, that's the other thing that really in this next half of season 8 and into season 9 is that with all these looming departures and the ones we know are happening, they need to really establish new characters that we care about. At the very least, we need to have somebody we care about on this show.
yeah,
Who do
and
you care about still?
that's a good question. Michonne, Carol, kind of Ezekiel now. Um, I did care about Carl. I don't know. There's not like a ton. Daryl didn't make my list, but
You've had a theory that Negan becomes kind of the main character.
yeah, that is what I'm guessing their backup plan is for Andrew Lincoln leaving. Because I don't think they're gonna kill off Negan. That would be a departure from the comics, and you're supposed to kind of come around to liking Negan, and some people already do like Negan, and I will say I like Negan more now than I did when he first showed up, and he's still got his goofy lines and whatever, but I think they've done a pretty good job of making him a little less just totally hateable, and I think he's had some good moments, especially with Carl, and maybe a couple with
Who's
Eugene,
gone now?
and I can see them thinking that that would be a good plan. Like in a perfect world, I would probably pick Michonne or Carol to lead The Walking Dead going forward, but knowing AMC, it's probably going to be Negan or Daryl.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've seen actually Maggie being sort of groomed by Rick to be the next big leader.
You're also seeing Carl
Why?
groomed by
Why?
Rick to be a leader,
Yes.
and look how that worked
Why
out.
is why is she still in Hilltop anyways? Like, what's the point of her leaving all her friends behind? I don't.
Yeah,
I know that there was a point in the beginning to hide her from
just
Negan,
that it's a
but
community that she kind of took under her wing and protected and assumed control from Gregory, who was awful. But
I just
I don't know.
don't.
I don't think the kingdom is, or sorry, the hilltop is the best community. It's just like, oh, it's a hill with a house and a fence and a bunch of
Yeah,
people we
and a bunch
don't
of
know
extras.
besides, yeah, like it's like Maggie, Enid, and Jesus are really the only characters there. I mean, they're doing a little bit with it now with it kind of operating as a prison for the wolves, which I think is interesting. That's kind of an interesting use of it. And I'm curious to see how that
Yeah,
goes. I'm sure it's going to go poorly. But yeah, I don't know.
yeah. What could
It's
go
the
wrong?
hilltop is not really comparable to the kingdom or Alexandria, in my opinion.
The kingdom is totally screwed now too. They lost like everybody, all their fighting men
Yeah,
and
well,
women.
they're essentially like a savior base at this point.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So what do you think? So the season 8 mid-season premiere is this coming Sunday. What are you predicting
well,
for
this is
that?
supposed to be Carl's last episode. For I don't know what he's gonna do because he's just kind of on his last legs, but I don't know. They keep talking about, oh, this is going to be such a fitting send off for him, and we think everyone will appreciate it, but they're really bad at reading their audience, so I do wonder if that's going to come to pass or not. Um, I don't even know what like a quote unquote fitting send off for Carl would be because there's just
Yeah.
like killing him off is just the problem in the first place, no matter how it's done. Like, for my money, like how they killed Carl off was actually not terrible. It was like kind of well done, where he was sick the whole time, and they were dropping hints about that, and
Yeah.
he kind of got bit just trying to help someone, and it was totally disconnected from the war. I thought that was kind of a good way to set it up, but all that said, it doesn't outweigh that it's just a terrible decision to kill Carl. So I don't think there's really a silver lining for this.
It's a kind of weird situation. Partly, they've done this sort of wait and see bullshit before, but a lot of times a character dies right then. We've had extended death scenes, like with Tyrese. We sort of got a big chunk of that episode devoted to him when he died. There's also very sudden death, like with Beth
Mm-hmm.
or Herschel. Um, but this one was, you find out about his death at the end of the mid-season, and then you have to wait until the start of the second half. And that reminds me more of like, who's gonna die when Negan hits him with his bat, between season 6 and 7.
Yeah.
I hate that. I hate those cliffhanger ones, because it's like, okay, so we're gonna have a whole episode devoted to Carl dying. That's not interesting to me.
Yeah, I don't like that
It's-
either.
it cuts the emotional impact of finding out that he's been bit in half. You find out he's been bit, and then, okay, now you have to sit around with it for 2 months, as opposed to, you find out he's been bit, and then he dies, and everyone sort of experiences that death, and it's all part of that emotional flow. And I just don't understand why they do
Maybe
this.
they'll open with him being dead, and then they just flash back to like different Carl moments, like it's a clip show or something.
I'm trying to picture it'll be a real close up on his face, but he won't be blinking.
Yeah.
Because they love these really slow close ups, and there'll be dramatic music, and Carol will be giving a motivational speech over the top of it. And then they'll just flash back with all these artsy flashbacks to all the good things he did, like him baking cookies with Carol, and him at the park with Enid and Judith, and no, I don't know what they're gonna do. It's an extended episode too, right? It's
Is it?
like I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't. I'd have to check that to be sure, but I'm pretty sure it's a long episode. So
I saw a clip that they're gonna show some of like the missing footage from how the Saviors escaped, which was like a big mystery from the finale, where they just all the Saviors were suddenly gone, and they were just like talking.
So
about
we're doing
how
a
they escaped.
flashback to that.
That's what I heard. That's like
Oh my god! Why do they do that? Why can't they just
Yeah.
tell the story in
I don't
order?
know. I don't know why they.
I don't
do
understand.
that, but-
So here's what happens then. So they go to Carl, like, in his last moments, and then they flash back to Negan breaking out and sending his people to all four corners of the little kingdom that they're in, and taking out all the good guys. So we're gonna basically have to rewatch just the stuff that didn't make sense in the finale. That's
all the missing
fantastic.
scenes. Yep.
I'm
And
so excited. I love
not
it how
remembering
they
them from
right.
months later.
It's kind of been like that this whole season. Like, we just jump into the action, and they don't tell us anything, and then they go back and show us.
Yeah,
what
like
happened.
Carl was bit 2 weeks ago, which
Yeah.
I didn't even understand until like after I saw the episode, and people were like, "No, no, that's when he got bit." I'm like, "Oh, I even that was something I missed."
It's same with like the initial assault on Negan. You suddenly have, Aaron and his crew just shooting at saviors, and you don't really know where, and then you don't really figure it out until a couple weeks later, when you start to understand the chronology and the geography of this whole conflict.
Mhm.
It's almost like they're just trying. They think that it's good storytelling or creates tension or something to not fill the audience in on anything relevant.
There's a difference between
That's
like
how it feels.
restricting information from the audience and then just like carving out chunks of the story so it just doesn't really make sense, and then
Right.
throwing the chunks at the wall like 2 episodes later. Like,
Well, like a show like Westworld does that very well, where they purposefully hide identities and timelines from the audience, and it makes you really think and question what's going on. But there's clues everywhere. They still give you something to go off of. Whereas Walking Dead, it's just
Yeah, it's
like
not just like
you
big
don't know what's
chunks of
going on.
time are just suddenly missing, which is just bizarre.
Yeah. I just it's real amateur. It just feels it's strange to have such a very successful show with such amateurish writing, plotting, editing. The editing, oh my god,
Yeah, that's
I
I don't
can't
really like
even.
you don't notice you don't always notice like amazing editing, but you definitely notice bad editing.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. The good edits you shouldn't notice. You shouldn't be thinking about them because they're showing you what you're supposed to
Right.
see. Um, is there any way for this season to be redeemable?
Uh I don't know. I don't really know what a satisfactory ending is going to be. It's just like we're heading towards a conflict where, at least judging by the comic, very few, like the villains can't really die. Like the villains go on to become important characters, so it just kind of this enormous war that's like the biggest war that's ever been seen in the series just sort of ends, and like I don't know. There's just not that many major losses. I mean, maybe that'll be different this time because we have people leaving and like there might be bigger deaths there, but there's not really like people aren't going to get that satisfying moment where Negan finally gets what's coming to him. And I mean, it's possible the show just might totally go in that direction and surprise everyone because they've been doing a lot of crazy stuff lately, but I think it's going to be really hard for them to swing a quote unquote like satisfactory ending out of this. Like they could do some cool sequences and some cool like the best they could hope to do I think is repeat kind of sequences like we saw with the Ezekiel episode. In the first half of the season where that was just like a really good episode within the war. And just I would love to see more episodes like that where they're really thoughtful and they represent a journey for a character.
Hmm.
So that's what I'm hoping to see.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, actual character growth and development and good action scenes or sequences would be great. It is hard to imagine a fitting resolution to this conflict, other than Simon becoming the new lead character
Unfortunately, I think
and
one of the
leading.
only people who will die is Simon because he's not a comic character,
Yeah.
which is a bummer. But
Although Daryl is not a
I will
comic
never
character.
believe that they're going to kill Daryl. Not ever.
Well, his Norman Reedus, his acting chops are just so amazing that, and
Yeah.
his lines that they give him are so thoughtful and interesting. He's sort of like the avatar for masculinity in the show, though, so that's
Yep,
why
that is
he's never
accurate.
gone anywhere. He's the somehow he's this the sex symbol, the badass. He doesn't need to be a character so long as he is those symbolism
Presence,
of
yes.
everything he represents. Yeah, which is fine. I actually think the less they have him talk, the better. Uh,
I don't know. I
you
think
call yourself a
I think they
king.
if they just gave him better lines, he would do okay. But obviously, we're pretty far away from that happening.
Well, the problem with Daryl, in all fairness, is that he had a really interesting character arc with Merle and with finding his
Hmm.
goodness from coming from the bad beginning. But then once that played out, they just didn't have much more. And it's kind of unfortunate because there are shows where characters have multiple arcs that are interesting, like the 100.
Hmm.
Where you have characters who they travel one arc and then they're put into a new situation where they have to then again face their own inner demons, struggles, conflicts with other characters, differences in. That's what one thing I really like about the 100 is that show puts characters who are on the same side often against one another because they have different ways of doing
That's what I
stuff.
would
They have
like to
different
see with Daryl
beliefs.
and Rick. And well, the show has teased
Absolutely.
that. I don't think they're ever going to go the whole 9 yards and have Daryl kind of splinter off and become his own bandit king leader. But that's like,
Well, because
yeah,
because they don't give any of their characters conviction. Like, look at Jesus has now taken on the role of Morgan, basically, and Morgan's just gone back to his old way of being. There's never any sort of consistent conflict that gets resolved in an interesting and satisfying
yeah,
way.
exactly.
In the 100, you're constantly having, you have characters who have to face the fact that they were wrong and reconcile with that. You have characters who make decisions that completely change the relationships with other characters. Like at the end of, I think, was Mount Weather the end of season 2?
Mhm.
Yeah. And then, you know, the decision that Clark makes in that, well, I won't go into any specifics, but that it really changes another character. What's his face? Becomes an alcoholic, basically.
Jasper.
Yeah, that Jasper is never the same after that. I'm not caught up with the show, but that's interesting when there's something that happens in a television show that fundamentally alters the relationships that the characters have, and that just hasn't happened in The Walking Dead ever, really.
No, pretty much.
Except for Shane,
Yeah, I agree.
maybe Shane. The conflict with Shane was interesting, and it did. I mean, granted, it ended in the death of Shane, but I think that kind of conflict actually did. That was an interesting conflict that screwed with the group dynamic, that screwed with the characters' relationships with one another. And ever since then, I can't think of a single one.
Yeah, they really don't like pitting the characters, like the good guy characters, against each other for the most part. Like they'll have them like fight for half an episode or something, but that's kind of as much as they're able to commit to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess we did see, we saw with Morgan when Rick wanted to go and kill all those saviors in their sleep, basically. Morgan saying this is the wrong way, but then they just dropped it like a hot rock.
Yeah.
Like, and of course half the fandom was like, Morgan's terrible, we hate him. Why can't? And it's maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe they do understand their fans
Too well.
Better than I understand them, I guess. Well, Walking Dead returns Sunday. 9 p.m. Eastern time. I'll be reviewing it. I'm sure you will be.
Thoughts.
Hot takes.
Hot takes, the hottest.
How hot will your take be?
Probably pretty hot.
Probably pretty hot. And we'll be arguing with y'all in the Twitters and the Facebooks and the internets of the world. All right. Thanks for listening.